Hey there, folks. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy, and just gonna hop into the subject really quickly. You've already seen the title, so you have an idea of what I'm going to talk about, and I've done discussions on this before. How people seem to reinvent history for the Nintendo, Wii, and Wii U systems. For some reason, it's like they can't fathom to grasp onto actual reality. So they have to create a world where things that didn't happen did happen, and things that did happen didn't happen, and that their specific perspective is the only truth to the situation. So, and I made a post on X, Twitter, whatever Musk wants to call it, saying how I noticed that there are people basically on both sides of this argument trying to rewrite history. Either those that are highly in favor, which there weren't very many before, and there seem to be a shit ton now, treating the Wii U like it was some golden era. There was actually a post that said that. Treating the Wii U like it was a golden era for Nintendo. It wasn't. And then there are those who treat the Wii U like it was the worst piece of tech ever created. Again, it wasn't. So, and I walk the line of, I love this system. I love this console. I highly enjoy the hell out of it. I can play all my stuff from my Wii. I have DS stuff I can play on it. And there are some really good games that are on the console that have unique ways to play that cannot be played anywhere else without heavy modification. And that heavy modification makes those games unenjoyable in the same way. So when I say, for me, I thoroughly enjoyed the Wii U, but I know it was a failed device. For Nintendo, it was a failed device, even though they made money off of it. It failed to meet the expectations that they set forth for it. Now, is a complete commercial failure? No, it did not completely fail commercially because, again, it made money. It just didn't make the amount of money that they needed it. Well, not needed, but wanted it to make. Nintendo's projections for the Wii U did not come true. And there are a multitude of reasons. There is no one single reason for why that machine did not do as well as it should have. So I'm just going to go over a few reasons why it should have been successful and the reasons why it wasn't successful. You are allowed to agree or disagree with my reasoning. But I think if you actually sit and listen and pay attention to what I'm saying, because I'm not flipping out, I'm not throwing a tantrum, I'm not ranting, I'm just talking. Now, I don't know if that's going to be elevated later on in this conversation because certain things do irritate me, and I am human. But there are plenty of reasons that the Wii U should have been successful. First reason, it was the successor to the Wii. And the Wii did gangbusters. So you would think that the Wii U would also do pretty well. It makes sense that you come off of one successful console and you use what you know about that console to make the next one. Another reason, unique gameplay. For a home console, the Wii U had the most unique way to play games. whether that was single or dual screen. The Wii U had the most unique ways to play a game for a home console. Now, I know there's going to be some people out there, but there are some games on PC that can use more than one screen. Some games. Not the majority. Some games. And those are few and far in between. Very few and far in between. I wish actually there would be more of them. What's the point of having multi-monitor setups if you can't use those setups for gaming other than spreading your game across multiple screens for one big bloated image? It doesn't feel the same. So, yeah. Another reason it should have been successful, it was the least expensive home console on the market. It didn't cost as much as the other platforms to be able to get it and get a game on it and start playing. Another reason, no forced installs. There is not one game on the Wii U that comes physically that you are forced to install on the hardware. Not one. Even with Xenoblade Chronicles X, you're not forced to install the packs for the Wii U for the physical copy of it, but they do help speed up gameplay. That's it. It cuts down loading times. Otherwise, you still get the same experience of the game. Well, I think it cuts down loading times and cuts down pop-in, because a lot of the assets are already there and just loading directly from memory. Let me not get on a tangent with that. So what was that? What, 4? I think that's 4 reasons. Another reason it should have been successful, right out the gate, free online. Free online. You didn't have to pay to get online to play anything that was online. At the time, Sony was crossing into PS4 and made the paid service required to be able to play online. And Xbox was already there. They had started doing it with 360. Hell, free online was one of the reasons that many people claim that they got a PS3 over a 360, because they didn't want to have to pay to be able to play online with other people. That excuse went right out the window as soon as Sony started doing it. And I'll admit, yeah, the same thing happened with Nintendo. Once they jumped to the Switch and they required online play, people went for it. And most of the reason is that it is still the cheapest to play online with Nintendo. It's still far cheaper to play online with Nintendo than Microsoft or Sony. But for the Wii U to have free online and all of the stuff that it came with out the box, man, that's just fucking ridiculous. Then you had Miiverse, which was an amazing community. It was an amazing community if you actually used it. You actually used it, you could get online, talk with people, play with people, and set up matches and stuff, set up gameplay, get advice. You could see people posting their art from the games because they would draw on the gamepad. Like, there was a bustling community for Miiverse. It was amazing beyond words. And I wish it would have never had to die because of a loud, vocal group that never really truly used it. That didn't get to experience it the same way I did. And yeah, sure, you had it on 3DS, but 3DS was not anywhere near as good as it was on Wii U for Miiverse. And it sucked. Another thing that would have been great, another reason that would be great for the Wii U to have been very successful, you could have 5-player multiplayer locally. Because you'd have one person on the Wii U gamepad and 4 others with any combination of the Wii remote and nunchuck, classic controller, pro controller. You could have had any of those other combinations of controllers be the other 4 players and have one person on the gamepad. And I don't think there were enough games that really truly exploited this. And it would have been nice if there were. Hell, Zombie U would have been a great one to utilize this if Ubisoft would have put more effort into it. Because you'd have one person controlling where the zombies are placed, and they'd have an overview of the map, and then you'd have 4 people on the TV trying to be survivors together in a group. That would have been fucking amazing. And the versus mode that they did was sort of like that, but it wasn't that deep. It seemed to me, once I tinkered with it a little bit, it seemed to me like an afterthought, which is unfortunate. But Ubisoft also lost a lot of money making that game. Well, working on the Xbox 360 version, but they blamed it on the Wii U, which I still find that odd. And I think what was the video I made? The discussion, Ubisoft's cookies was what I called it. Like, if I'm a baker at a bakery and I make a batch of cookies and the first batch of cookies burns because I made a mistake, I don't then make a new batch of cookies and blame the customers for the fact that the first batch of cookies burned. I don't blame them for that. And I think when Ubisoft did all that and they put a sour taste in people's mouths, it ruined any chances of that game being more successful than it was. Especially since when at launch it was a 6-to-1 attachment rate with the console. I mean 1-to-6. So every 6 people that bought a Wii U, there was at least one person that bought Zombie U. That's a hell of an attachment rate early on. That is a hell of an attachment rate early on. And there are still more games that are on the Wii U, but plenty of people don't actually know. Like, oh, the Wii U's library has already been ported to Switch. No, it hasn't. Like, there are still games on the Wii U that are not on the Switch. So don't say they are, because they're not. And some of them, it just the way they work can't just be translated over to the Switch. You'd have a lot of stuff to do to them to make them playable in the same way. And some would require more than one Switch. So a lot of people already have more than one Switch, but you have to think of cost up front to the person buying the product, the perceived value of buying the product up front. I don't want to pay $600 on top of paying another $120 just about in order to get the full experience of a game. $720 to get the full experience of one game is unreasonable by most people's standards. Not everyone, but by most. So, and a bare minimum $620, because you'd have to have one that would be able to be playable. One would have to be dockable on the TV, and the other would have to be held in your hand, so the Switch Lite could work. But still, that's unreasonable for a lot of people to be expected to do, especially if everything doesn't come together. Now, I would say that the Wii U had a lot of unique ideas that never really got to be fully utilized. Like the idea of being able to hook 2 gamepads to the system and be able to use them both at the same time never really got realized. And And that's more than likely because the console didn't take off as well as Nintendo had hoped. And also being able to hook your 3DS up to it as a controller. That really wasn't utilized a whole lot. I think the only real game that really does utilize it is Smash Bros. And that sucks. Because you either have to have a copy of Smash Bros. For 3DS or purchase or have had purchased the controller app for Smash Bros. For Wii U. So the 3DS would connect to it and play. There are so many opportunities for other stuff that would have been really great that it just never got brought to fruition, but that's more than likely because, again, the console didn't do very well. Because there's the chance that another Four Swords game could have very easily have been made for the Wii U. Where you'd have 4 people playing with their 3DSs as controllers, and they'd be able to separate off into separate individual screens. And if it was popular enough, have 2 different gamepads, one with a person that would be able to aid the heroes, and one person being a dungeon master creating the situation the heroes have to take on. Would have been fucking amazing. But it never came to fruition. I actually have a video talking about the potential of the Wii U on my channel. It's also on the Old Gamers at Large channel as well, where I really went ham on the idea of thinking how the Wii U could possibly be used and how things could evolve from it. That video is so old. I might actually redo that video, like redo the whole thing. Now I'm thinking about it. Call it the lost potential of the Wii U. So I don't really. Those are some of the more positive reasons. I know there are still other really good reasons for the Wii U that could have made it successful, along with the game's pricing being cheaper than PlayStation and Xbox generally. But we're going to move forward on to negative reasons. One reason the Wii U failed was the large gap in space for content between the Wii and the end of life for the Wii and the introduction of the Wii U. There wasn't a lot going on with the Wii at the time to keep people's mindset on what Nintendo was doing and keep them relevant with everyone. There was a huge gap. Now, there were definitely some smaller releases and some third-party releases, but there wasn't anything that really captured a lot of people's attention. So that's a reason to knock against it, because it wasn't relevant to very many people at first. Another reason is their advertising campaign. I have no idea why the people in marketing didn't just stick with the same thing that they had already done. Where you had the 2 reps show up to the house, have a Wii remote in the game, and do the "we would like to play with you" and bow, and it was endearing and it drew attention. It was easy to just advance that. Especially when you call it Wii U. And I've said it so many times. Have them show up, gamepad and Wii remote or Pro controller in hand. Do the same thing. Have a game, have the video of the game playing on the screen of the gamepad. Have them stop in front of you looking all nice, prim and pressed. We would like to play with you. Same thing. You're just adding 2 words. 2 words. 2 words. Then you show off how the game is played in the commercial. And that's it. Short, sweet, simple, to the point, and it expresses everything you need to know and makes you interested. That's it. That's all they needed. Now, not to say all of their advertising was horrible, it just didn't stick the landing. Because you lost all of the things that made the Wii interesting with their advertising. And they could have made it so much easier on themselves. It wouldn't have cost as much money to do it the way that they had been doing with the Wii. I understand that they wanted to show that it was separate. It was different. But you don't necessarily have to kill the way you did the advertising. It could have stayed the same. Next thing, a major reason as to why it failed to meet their expectations. They left too much open space the first 1.5 to 2 years for third-party developers. They left far too much space for them. And without a lot of major hit titles from Nintendo themselves, it just didn't work out as well. It didn't work out anywhere near as well. So it's like, and that's where the idea of droughts came from. Even though Nintendo Wii U was getting games at the time, it wasn't getting the types of games that it otherwise would have normally during that time frame, because Nintendo held themselves back to give third parties room. Because what people didn't remember was that third parties complained to Nintendo about their games not selling well against Nintendo's IP proper. So Nintendo gave them space, and then the next thing that I'm going to say occurred. Third parties pulled a lot of their projects. And a lot of projects that people were hyped and waiting for. Like, they just pulled a boatload of them. A lot of stuff that people wanted to see happen got yoinked from production for this platform. Many of which got yoinked before launch. And I remember being so disappointed that so many of those games got canceled. They got horribly canned. Because I was one of those people that wanted to get them. There was the Young Justice game that got completely murked, because I was interested in it because it was going to have a different gameplay style. I was actually looking to go ahead and get the Wii version of the game, get the 360 version of the game, and the Wii U version of the game at the time, because they all would have had different play styles, but it would have been centered around the same story for Young Justice, which I think covered seasons 1 and 2. And I was so upset. I was so upset when that announcement occurred, and I was like, and then I just saw other games dropping like flies. Crisis 3, which was supposed to be on the Wii U, got completely dropped. And was that before launch? No, I think that one was after launch. But it's like, y'all really crapped on this machine so horrible. Like, y'all all pulled your support after praising the hell out of it E3 2011. And I should have mentioned that would have been another successful reason. That E3 2011, so many game developers came out the woodwork talking about how Nintendo listened to them and how great the console was and how it was going to open up so many new ideas for gameplay and ways to actually interact with your games. And I was hyped for that. I was one of those people that was hyped for that. And to see that it all just crumbled because a bunch of third parties just pulled out. Just like, oh, nah, we're not. Oh, you thought we were developing a game? Oh my gosh, who told you we were? No, we weren't going to make a game for that platform. No, no, silly person, you thought that? Oh no, buddy, sorry, no. Even though we promised you we would, we told you, and we sang the praises of this machine to the high heavens, to the moon and beyond. We sang its praises, and yeah, no, we're not doing that now. That hurt a lot. And then with that, they went and started blaming the hardware. And as a person, even back then, I knew the Wii U was better hardware than the 360, and there were games coming to the 360, and it was already said that it's easy to port from the 360 to the Wii U. So in my head, I'm like, the logic doesn't line up, especially when they said it wasn't more than like $1 million to port a game from the 360 to the Wii U, which would be very quickly made up in sales. So I'm like, if it's easy to port to the Wii U, it doesn't cost much money to port to the Wii U. Why is it not being done? Because it doesn't make sense. Because you're cutting yourself off from a base of potential finance. For what reason? If you're a third party, you want your stuff to be on as many platforms as possible, or at least all of the platforms that it makes sense to put them on, because those platforms utilize, or not utilize, but those platforms do very well with your product. And people can't say that Call of Duty didn't do well on Nintendo, because it did well on Wii. Call of Duty did very well on the Wii, and taking what you had already established with the Wii and moving it over to the Wii U would have been something that made a lot of sense. But that also lends credence to the next thing. Botched ports. People say, oh no, that wasn't botched. It wasn't botched at all. When you make Mass Effect 3 for the Wii U, and there is no way to import your save from any previous version of the game, whether it would be Mass Effect 1 and 2 for 360, PS3, or PC, you have no way to import your save from either of those games, any of those versions of the game, to keep your story going and consistent. And you don't get the DLC that came out after the console launched. Is that not botched? Is that not a port of the game that was botched? Please tell me. Is that not intentionally crippling the product when it wouldn't have cost you much to put that little bit of extra effort in? Or even better, why would you release Mass Effect 3 Special Edition on the Wii U for $60 full price, knowing that you are also within the same time frame releasing the full trilogy again for the 360 and also for the PS3, which now puts the first game on the PS3, and didn't once think about porting 1 and 2 to the Wii U so that Wii U players could get the full experience. Not once. Not once was that thought of. Or maybe it was thought of and it probably got canceled right along with Crysis. Even if each individual Mass Effect game released on the Wii U at $60, because you have to work in the extra gamepad features and stuff like that, it would have been worth it. Because it's understandable if the trilogy would be cheaper on the other platforms because there's not as much that would go into them. That is wholeheartedly understandable. People would have griped about it, but a lot of people would have understood it. A lot of people would have understood it, and they would be like, "Oh shoot, I could do my whole Mass Effect run on the Wii U, and I don't miss out on any of the smaller interwoven story bits from the previous installments." Like they could have released Mass Effect Special Edition, Mass Effect 2 Special Edition for the Wii U, which would have been both games with all of the DLC included in both of them. And hell, they wouldn't have had to split disc like they did for the 360 version of Mass Effect 2, because it would have all been able to fit on one Wii U disc. They could have done that. They chose not to, but they could have done that. And yes, that is irritating to me because I saw the potential possibilities for it. But they didn't attempt it. And maybe even if they didn't release all of them at full price, say you release Mass Effect 3 Special Edition at full price, release Mass Effect 1 and 2 Special Edition at $40. They could have done it. They would have made more money. But let me get off my high horse from Mass Effect. But there are multiple games that type of stuff happened with, where there were games that came out and they lacked any of the DLC that the other versions of the games had, or they didn't get updates that the other versions of the games got, or didn't get updates that they were promised at all in the beginning. That, to me, is intentionally crippling your product. And people are like, but why would you do that? You wouldn't make as much money. Well, it depends on what your back-end deals were. And I was saying that back then. Like, it depends on what your back-end deals were. We don't know what the contracts are like. But, I mean, this whole recent thing with Sony and Microsoft and the FTC, or is it FCC? One of them. With that coming out, and we learned that Sony was setting up contracts to intentionally either remove products from other platforms or hobble them, kind of makes more sense now. They were paying not to have something exclusive to them, but to not have a product on another platform. That's different. It's one thing to pay for exclusivity to yourself. It's another to pay to keep something off of another platform. But we didn't know that for sure at the time. We do know for now. We do know now that was part of the case. But we didn't know for sure back then. So it was bad advertising, a drought, not a whole lot of first party releases in the onset from Nintendo, botched third party, and the major one, people will still deny this, but the major one was the gaming media misconception, intentional misconception about the Wii U that started with Adam Sessler talking about how he didn't know if it was a different platform and they didn't know what they were looking at, even though you saw this machine twice. You saw this machine twice. Once in 2011 and then again in 2012 before launch. And you saying that got spread to mainstream media. Mainstream media moved along with the idea that the Wii U was the gamepad and it worked with the Wii. And back then, even then, I was still wondering, like, how do you reconcile a product turning another product into something it wasn't? Please, I'm still wondering. Can anyone explain to me how the Wii U gamepad was supposed to enhance the Nintendo Wii so much so that it became a high definition platform? Can anyone explain that? No one can explain that. No one can explain that broken logic. But at the time, so many people didn't have any idea of how technology worked that a lot of people ran with that. A lot of people that weren't in the know ran with that. And as much as anybody could try to say the opposite, unless you could actually show people in person the differences, people weren't going to believe what you said, and they'd be like, oh, no, I already got a Wii. And I witnessed that several times out and about at different stores where someone was like, no, I already got a Wii. It was like, they're not the same console. Yes, you can play your Wii stuff on your Wii U, but you can't play your Wii U. You can't play anything from Wii U on the Wii. It was mind-boggling to come across that in person and actually see people had believed that. Or if you go into different gaming stores like GameStop, because at the time I was still going up until they did more BS. But you could go into different game stores or different electronic sections and department stores, and you see that the Wii U section was shrunk down, which meant that you couldn't even show the wide berth of stuff that was actually available to the platform. Everything was narrowed or put in a back corner somewhere where you actually had to go searching for it. And I remember looking around certain stores and I'm like, where is the Wii U shit? Well, you have to go hunt it down to find it, and it was a brand new platform. That's some wild shit to me. Yeah, you might see the errant poster every now and again somewhere if there was a major release, but if you just went in on a normal casual day and you were trying to find stuff, you could not find it. Not very easily anyway. It just wasn't where you would readily see it available. But when you combine all that stuff together, it does seem like a concerted effort to create a situation where a certain platform is pushed to the background and others are promoted. Especially if you know money is changing hands for those other platforms. That's all the stuff that I remember going on. That's the stuff that I experienced. That's the stuff that I saw. Now, to hear people tell it, again, getting back to the main major topic here, the Wiivisionist history. You have people say, well, no, nobody liked the Wii. The Wii didn't do good. We didn't do well. Yes, look, Johnny, just because you stopped playing on your Wii doesn't mean everyone stopped playing on their Wii. The perpetually online community, which is it's been around for a while. The perpetually online community is where people went online and start saying, oh no, I'm not playing my Wii anymore. Why would I play that? There's not, like, because you didn't look to see what was available. Oh, I don't like the waggle, but like the majority of people didn't give a fuck. Let's be honest. The majority of people didn't care that they had to swing a controller around. It actually made it interesting for a lot of people who were intimidated by the number of buttons on a controller. Or are we going to pretend that wasn't a thing? That's one of the reasons that a lot of people didn't get into gaming, is that they were intimidated by the number of buttons a controller had. And if you had to do a physical motion that represented an action in the game, that made a lot more logical sense to those people. Are we going to pretend that wasn't the case? Are we going to pretend that wasn't the case? I guess that's what we were doing. Again, Revisionist. We're going to pretend that was never a thing. And the Wii, and by extension, the Wii U in some cases, got people up, moving around and exercising, not being stale and stagnant. Again, sitting in one position for too long is bad for your physical health. That's something we know. That's something we know for a fact. So the fact that Nintendo made a console that made you get up and move even a little bit was actually helpful. And it's not like the concepts of the Wii and the Wii U didn't move on to other things, because you have VR. What is a VR headset if not a Wii U gamepad strapped to your face? Please tell me. Because that's all the Wii U gamepad did. It gave you a third axis. That's what a VR headset does. It gives you a third control axis. Actually, third and fourth, because you're doing also X and Y again. So that's what the Wii U gamepad was. It just had the buttons and stuff on it. That's it. And people for some reason couldn't understand that concept. But also, there are people that pretend that the Wii U did everything that ever needed to be done properly. I'm like, no, Nintendo screwed up with the Wii U. I've already laid out several of the reasons for that. They screwed up with the Wii U. They didn't come in with a good amount of momentum, and then they left a wide berth of space for third parties that end up eventually abandoning them because of contractual obligations they made somewhere else. And that's more than likely the reason, because a lot of the stuff that they dropped had no reason to be dropped. It made more sense to just release the product that you had already been working on and had already got to a point where it was working very well. It would have made more sense to just release it at that point instead of losing money and not releasing it. But Nintendo themselves also screwed up because they didn't look at how people were changing or how social media was working at the time. And they just ran with the Wii U and didn't do any major groundwork to get the mass populace involved. I will blame that on them. They did try to do things the regular way that they had already been doing, and not third parties, but not social media, shit. Gaming media did them dirty. And yeah, they were already working on what would become Nintendo Directs before, but I'm pretty sure the process of a whole console being raw dogged in a back alley made them speed that process up a whole lot faster. So they made a general amount of mistakes that also contributed to the Wii U not doing as well as it could have as a machine. They did. But is it solely their fault? No, it's not solely their fault. Because as much as people want to act like there wasn't some sort of concerted effort to kind of keep things off of Nintendo's platforms, if you go back and look at how things played out, like genuinely just look at it, you can see a pattern. And it's wild that there are some media sites that removed content that they created bashing the Wii U. Is that not a telling sign? That is. I mean, at least for me. But then again, I overanalyze everything. So maybe I think about things in a way that the majority of people don't actually sit down and fully think about. And I'm sitting here with these thoughts in my head like, this machine could have done better. I mean, it could have at least reached the 30 million mark if there was no hindrance to it. It could have at least made 30 million in sales. If there was nothing hindering it as far as like what Nintendo's mistakes were, or this intentional attack to take it down because people wanted Nintendo out of the console game, it could have done 30 million units easy. It could have done 30 million units easy, especially if the third-party games that were promised to it would have come out, and the games that did come out didn't remove features or DLC from them. Again, if you don't believe it, actually take a look at everything. Don't just take my word for it. Go back, look at those videos. Look at those articles, at least the ones that you can find. Look at even the reviews for a game on the Wii U versus a counterpart on the 360 or PS3. And we know for a fact the Wii U did better than those consoles on running these games. Hell, even with that one Square Enix interview where they talked about how the Wii U could have actually done more for Deus Ex Human Revolution Director's Cut. They could have made that game look and run better, but it was held back for parity with the other platforms. Again, if that don't sound like botching, that doesn't sound like an intentional holdback. I'm sorry. And you can't say it was because the hardware was weak, because again, it came out before what would be the Xbox One and PS4 were finalized as hardware. And you want to know how I know it was before those were finalized as hardware? Because of how rushed they were released. Both the Xbox One and the PS4 were released in horrible states when they released. And a lot of people won't remember that the original Xbox One dashboard was shitty. The original Xbox One dashboard had so many slowdowns and problems, it was ridiculous. I can't say much about the PS4, but if I remember correctly, it also arrived in a very similar state. And there are some people who have OG Xbox Ones that even with firmware updates still wouldn't be able to use the full suite of the full suite of capabilities those machines had for Xbox One and PS4, because they were rushed products. There were things wrong with even their retail units that got sold that never got fixed for some people. I think Jay is one of them. His Xbox One still has features that he couldn't use to this day. And on top of that, they couldn't afford to have Nintendo sit on the market with a console for that long. That's why with the situation with the Switch, they released updates to the PS4 and Xbox One because they weren't ready to move on to the next platforms yet. Well, Nintendo stuck with their life cycle. Again, you ain't gotta take my word for it. Just look at history. And people that are saying that the Wii U was a golden era, please shut up. It wasn't. It was not. Nintendo themselves made a lot of mistakes. Yes, there's some really, really good games that were released on the Wii U, and there are some of the best variations of other games released on the Wii U. But it wasn't a golden era. A golden era implies prosperity. Nintendo was not prosperous during the Wii U. Or at least not heavily prosperous. And people also pretend that the 3DS wasn't a thing and just the Wii U was on the market, or it's a separate company for some reason. I still don't get that thought process. Because the 3DS is making money, Nintendo is still making money. And the Wii U made money anyway. So, yeah. But I'm done. I think I've discussed this long enough. More than likely, I'm not going to make another video on this. And if it does come up again, it's probably just going to be on Weekend Podcast. And if anything, I may clip what I said from there and post it to my channel if the stream isn't on my channel in the first place. But that's it. Thank you guys very much for listening in. Drop your opinions in the comments. Keep your eyes and ears up for more stuff from me. And until next time, enjoy your games and peace out, everybody.